Shalom, shalom. Welcome once again to our midweek MIDrash. I'm just clicking on the screen here. Okay. Let's see what I'm doing here. Okay. Welcome. We're back to our regular format of attacking Psalm 139. We are up to the second stanza of Psalm 139. You say, what are you talking about stanzas? Okay. Well, if you look at Psalm 139, there's 4 poetic paragraphs that each contain 6 verses, and the concluding verse of each of those is a couplet that elaborates on each of the unit's central theme. So 1 through 6 was his omnipotence, his knowledge of all things, and 7 through 10, which we begin today, is his presence is everywhere, and it continues with 13 to 18 and then 19 to 24. And so we're gonna hit that in just a momento. Yeah. And let me see. So we missed you last week, but last week we did a teaching on Yom Teruah, So we're grateful for you for checking us out on that. But we're gonna steam ahead with Psalm 139. We're gonna begin with verse 8 to 12. We're gonna get to 7. We'll see how far we get today. But Herman's going to give a little preview, and then we're going to share some scriptures, and then we're going to get right into the Hebrew and take it from there and let the Ruach have his way with us tonight. Amen. Hermano, good to see you, brother.
Yes. Hello to everyone out there. William, I noticed, William, you just signed in. Shalom.
Shalom,
welcome. And welcome to everyone else that's going to be listening to this in the future. Yes. Okay, so Bob, I don't know if Gilbert is in, that he would want to open up in prayer.
I haven't heard from Gilbert at this point.
Gilbert, we need a blessing.
Yeah, we need. Pat, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, Pat, maybe you can open up in prayer for us.
Yes.
Okie dokie.
Our Father and our King, Creator of the heavens and the earth, we praise you for who you are, and we thank you that we can gather together this Wednesday night to open up your scriptures and learn more about your ways. I want to thank you for all the blessings you bestow upon us each and every day.
Thank you, Lord.
And I ask you to bless each family here tonight. Guide us, protect us, and help us to be strong. Help us to be conquerors, strong and ready to go. I ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pat.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Amen.
Okay. So, as you all know, we finished the first stanza, and we're going to be going into the second one. But before I enter into the second stanza, I just would like to go back and show you something in a moment and remind you of the structure of the first stanza, which is a synthetic parallel. And the reason why I want to go back and just show you is because the second stanza is also written in a synthetic parallel, and I want you to visualize, to see them not really side by side, but one after the other. Okay, so that's what I would like to do. And the first stanza, of course, as Bob said, focuses on the Lord's omniscience, and the second stanza focuses on his omnipresence. And those two things, believe it or not, go hand in hand. If you believe in one, then you should believe in the other. They go hand in hand. There's no ifs and buts about it. Okay, so let me just set up here and do a little sharing. And Bob, let me know when you see.
Getting to it. Getting on it. There we go.
Okay. All righty. So this was the first stanza, and I'm not going to dwell too much on it. I just want you to see that it is structured as a synthetic parallel where you have the opening statement, and then, which is here, you have searched me and know me, and then you build on that. And in this case, the poet David focuses on his external and internal activity, and then the stanza culminates in amazement and also praise. Okay, so that's the first one. That's the first stanza on omniscience. And what we're going to see here is the second stanza. Okay, and it's also written as a synthetic parallelism. So what we have here is the introductory premise. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? Right? There are two rhetorical questions that begin the stanza. And then, based on that, David then begins to answer those questions. And in doing so, he teaches the Lord's omnipresence. Okay? So, as you can see here, poetically, David is talking about going upward above the earth, going downward under the earth, going east, going west, okay, the different directions. And then in the middle of the stanza, he confesses that the Lord is still in control. Okay? He's still in control. And then the stanza ends with darkness and light, because the idea is, where can I go? I can't go anywhere. Where I go here, I go there, you're there. I can't hide from you in the darkness. Darkness is as light. So this is the way this stanza is structured. Now, what we also see here is we see some parallelism and antithetical parallelisms within. Like, for instance, when he talks about going up into the heaven, if he can do that, in essence, he's talking about the abode of the living. And then when he talks about going down into Sheol, he's talking about the abode of the dead. So there we have a contrast there. And when he talks about the possibility of riding the wings of the sunrise, right? It's talking about the abode of the light, and then going westward, the abode of the darkness. So even in here, we have like a parallelism as well as antithetical. You have abode of the living and the abode of the light, the abode of the dead and the abode of darkness at sunset. So there's a lot of beautiful little nuances within the overall structure of the stanza. Bob, is there anything you'd like to share on that?
Not at this time. I think you gave it a good setup.
Yeah.
Again, I liked you reminding us that the first verse is a rhetorical question. There is no answer, no adequate answer that we can give to that. It's, again, stems from the amazement that he concludes verse 6 with. He's almost with his shoulders up saying, where can I go from your ruach? Where can I go from your face?
Well, I'll talk a little. Pardon. I'll talk a little bit about that concept of the rhetorical questions and why David is using it when we get to the verse. All right, scrolling down. So this is the structure of the second stanza. It's also a synthetic parallel where you have an introductory line and then you build on those lines. All right. Now, another beautiful thing that I see about this is that when he comes to the end of the stanza, as I say, he talks about lightness and dark, the no concealment concept, because he realizes, I can't conceal myself from you. I can't go anywhere, nor can I conceal myself. So the no concealment concept harkens back to God's ability to see our external and internal activities of the previous stanza, right? Because there's no hiding. But the idea of the darkness also transitions the poem to darkness of the womb. And I did share that before. So we have here in this concept of the darkness going back and going forward. Okay, the darkness of the womb, as well as no concealment from the Lord, seeing our external and internal activities. Now, as I said, within the larger synthetic parallel structure, there are smaller poetic devices, and I'm going to get into those as we go through the verses. We have, of course, no surprise, synonymous parallelisms, antithetical parallelisms, and anthropomorphism. And we'll get into that when we get to those verses. So the point there is that there are devices within the overall structure. Now, one more thing, Bob, before I turn it over to you, is that as a side note, verse 12 is our first triplet of the poem. Okay. Up to now, we've been having couplets, just two lines, couplets, right? Verse
Mhm.
12 is our first triplet. And what I want to just bring out here, just to tease you a little bit, is because it's a triplet, the the punctuation differs a little bit. And in this case, what we have here is the ole wa yore, which is this little arrow here, like a less than sign with this mark. And we'll talk about that when we get there. Then we have the athnak, which is like a wishbone, like a carrot, right? The wishbone sign. And then the siluk, which is the little vertical bar. So this is very typical poetic breakdown of a verse, and these are the major disjunctive accents when they're triplets. Okay, the ole wa yored, and by the way, these are Bob. I'm sure you know these words. Ole, like the olah offering, right, where ascends. This literally means ascending and descending, like the olah offering that ascends, right? And the conjunction wa and the yored to descend, like the Jordan River. These words, you're familiar with these words. So you have the ascending and descending, ole wa yored, the athnak, and then the siluk. All right, but more on that when we get to verse 12. Okay. All
Amen.
right. All right. So let me close this off here, and if I can remember how to stop sharing. All right.
And you're going to put up
Yeah.
the verse 7, right?
Yes. Give me one moment. I maneuver this around.
Very good.
So that's a little introduction there.
Amen. And I have a few scriptures I just would want to toss out there.
Okay.
Again, his presence is everywhere. There's nowhere we can hide from him. And we've touched on that before. Sometimes we would like to hide from him, but to no avail. If we are, dwelling in secret sin or in foolishness. So that we don't have that option. Okay. And we shall behold him face to face. His presence is everywhere. His face, his presence, and we're going to get into that right here in this verse 7, where it speaks of his presence. And I would like to read first off from Jeremiah 23, verse 23 and 24, where he says, "Am I an Elohim near at hand, says Yahuwah, and not an Elohim afar off also?" Okay. Am I only close and not far? Am I only here and not there? It says, "Can anyone hide himself in secret places? So I shall not see him," says Yahuwah. "Do I not fill heaven and earth?" says Yahuwah. "Do I not fill the heavens and the earth?" And there again, you get the sense of his presence is everywhere. Shlomo, Melech Yisrael, Solomon once said that the heavens cannot contain him. We think of Elohim existing in heaven, whereas it's actually the reverse. That Yah is greater than his creation. He's immense, and yet he's infinitely small, infinitely large. He goes above and beyond all that is. And so I thought that was a good verse to tie in. Am I not an Elohim near at hand, and not one that is afar off? Can anyone hide himself in the secret places so I cannot see him? Do I not fill the heavens and the earth? Where can you go to elude me? So let us then go into the text if we can.
Okay, you want me to put it up on the screen there?
Yeah.
Okay.
We go
All
to
right.
verse 7, and we're going to get into here we go. Click on that. Here we go. Okay. And again, we're reading in the top line from right to left. Ana, to where? Okay. Elech, to where can I go? Where can I go? Meruchecha, meruchecha, right? Because you have the right, meru chechach. Where can I go from your ruach? We see the word ruach right in there.
Right.
Ruach. Where can I go from the ruach of you? Where can I go from your ruach? And that cuts that first portion off. Okay. Ve'inai, ve'ina, ve'ana, and to where? Okay, the same word that we said at the beginning, ana. Oh, this is and where, but we have that vav with the shva underneath it. It generally means and. It usually is an inclusive. Okay, and to where? Mi panecha, and to where? From the presence of you. Panim is the word that the root of which is to turn, to face. It's often translated as the countenance or the face. Where can I go from your presence? From your presence. Evrach, evrach. Can I flee? And that is, okay. Barach, the root of that is to bolt, to flee, to run, almost like to put to flight. Okay, to make haste. Okay, it's what happened like with Yonah. He fled in the other direction, right? And where can I flee? From you, from your presence. And again, those who are believers, that's the last thing on their mind, fleeing from the presence. But when we live duplicitously or when we live falsely, we have every reason to flee from El Chai, the living Elohim. So again, to where can I go from your spirit, and where from your presence can I flee? Where indeed can I go? Where can I have freedom from who you are, And let me just see what I got here. In Psalm 51:11, I have something else there, where it says, do not cast me away from your presence, and do not take your kadosh ruach from me. Where can I go from your presence? Cast me not away from your presence. So these two verses give us the impression that if he wants me to be there, I cannot escape him. But if I reject him, he can cast us away. He can cast us away. Panim, okay, is the idea of the face, the presence. Whenever we read in the scriptures of doing something before Yahuwah, you shall have no other Elohim before Yahuwah. It means literally doing it right in front of him, which is an obvious high-handed, rebellious action, right? We shall not do these things before him. Not that we should try to do it clandestinely, quietly, and secretly, because that does no good. But the arrogance is what's implied there too. But also the intimacy when we do things before Yahuwah. When we make a presentation before Yah, we're doing it to him. It's like we're entering into a direct connection, a direct communication. It's just so much better when we can look at each other when we communicate, which is why, I can actually see Herman as I'm speaking, and as I was talking with William earlier. It's good to communicate and see each other and hear the voice, the inflection, the nuance of communication, which the face can betray. There's a lot of actors out there who can act a certain way and speak a certain way, and can even pass a lie detector test if they're that good of an actor. But we need to work out our communications and to be in the presence. Do not cast me from your presence. It's almost like when we do something bad and we go before the presence of our father, and we're told, your father, wait till your daddy gets home. He's going to
Yeah.
just be afraid. And instead of giving you a wallop, he just kind of shakes his head. And you see the disappointment on his face rather than rage. You just see a disappointment. I expected better. Why? Why am I hearing this? Why is this happening? So do not cast me away from your presence. And take not your ruach, your set apart ruach from me. You know how horrible that is. How horrible that is to be in that position. Of course, we know this is after David grievously sinned, but he knew that he sinned first and foremost against Yah. That's where his major sin and his major confession had to be realized. Cast me not away from your presence. Don't dismiss me. Don't tell me, go to your room. I don't want to talk about it. Yeah, but I'm sorry, Dad. Yeah, that's fine. But just we'll talk later, or whatever. You know, it's a disappointment. You know, we always think of Yah, you know, punishing us if we're that, but he's disappointed in us. Why would you do that? You know better. You know, and worse is somebody else is going to see that you did this or said this and going to think it's okay. You know, you diminish my kadoshness, my set apartness, by trivializing these things and thinking lightly of them when they are very important elements to our communication. You know, Noten HaTorah, he's the giver of Torah. He's the giver of Shabbat. He made the Kadash, he made the Shabbat holy, made it set apart, and then he expects us to keep it that way, to maintain it. You know, the eternal Elohim placed Adam in paradise, and he expected Adam to maintain its pristine standard and its holiness, its set apartness, distinct from the rest of the world. Here was this wonderful garden, and he can eat from all the trees except for one. And anyway, I don't want to go too far off the subject here. And a couple of other things I wanted to point out. Isaiah 63, 9 and 10. Yeshayahu 63. Isaiah 63, verses 9 and 10. And here we are. Okay. And yeah, speaking of Israel here, in all their affliction, he was afflicted, and the Malach, the angel of his presence, saved them. In his love and in his pity, he redeemed them, and he bore them and carried them all the days of old. So again, when we get correction from our parents, sometimes we prefer the switch. Sometimes we prefer a swat, because when the words cause us to feel terrible, that we disappointed the one who loved us most. And it says, in all their affliction, he was afflicted. You know, as we studied our last study on the servant, Eved, Messiah, in Isaiah 53. In all their affliction, he was afflicted. And the Malach, the messenger of his presence, saved them. And the Malach Yahuwah, we believe, is Mashiach also, the Melech Elohim, the Melech Yahuwah, because he speaks as Yahuwah in the first person. And the Malach of his presence, the messenger of his presence, saved them. He saved them. And in his love and in his pity, he redeemed them. And he bore them and he carried them all the days of old. And we know that Yahuwah bears us, he carries us. He understands our weaknesses, and when we stumble, he helps us and prevents us from falling. And he carries us. He carries us. Where can we go from him? Where? We don't want to go too far, because he will bear us and he will carry us all the days of old. All the times when we thought that nobody was looking, he was there. All those times where we could have really gotten into big trouble, but we didn't, he was there. Again, just as we're talking about this, if I said to the heavens, you are there, you know, to make my bed in Sheol, you are there. You're always there. And if we live a kadosh lifestyle, we're not bothered by that. But if we're living, again, double-minded, And falsely, we're kind of looking over our shoulder and hoping to conceal this in a secret matter, even though the scriptures tell us there is no secret place you can go, or secret place where you can file that sin, an overt action that you think is not so bad that you can kind of keep it on the slide. I want to read one other portion from Ezekiel 39:29. Again, this is the eternal Yah speaking. And I will not hide my face from them any more, for I shall have poured out my ruach on the house of Israel, says Adonai Elohim, the sovereign power, the sovereign strength, eternal. Okay? I will not hide my face from them anymore. And then he goes on to explain what that means, okay? For I shall have poured my ruach out upon the house of Israel. And again, the united Israel, no longer north and south, no longer Jew and Joe, the Jewish people, and those of Joseph, those of Ephraim, who have been scattered through the nations. And as I said, Deuteronomy tells us in the first couple chapters that he's going to bless them 1,000-fold, which means that in the days that we're living, there should be roughly 4.5 to 5 billion descendants on the earth today without their identity intact. But they're coming to know who they are. And so all of Israel will be saved, all the representatives of all the tribes, not just Yehuda. People think that the Jew is Israel and Israel is the Jew, but no, that's only one of 12, or if you will, two in 10, if you're talking about the southern and the northern. So either way, however you want to slice it, I will have poured out my ruach. Yes, Pat.
That kind of goes along with this. It's Jeremiah 23 and 24.
Okay. I read that earlier, but you can go ahead.
Am I only Elohim nearby, declares Yahuwah, and not a Elohim far away? Can anyone hide in secret places so that I cannot see him? Declares Yahuwah. Do not I fill heaven and earth? Declares Yahuwah.
Amen. Exactly. So again, he is everywhere. He is everywhere. There's no place that he is not. And again, there's a beauty in that conclusion that there's nowhere I can go. I cannot outrun him. I cannot outthink him. I cannot out-strategize him or hide from him in any way. So it's there's a beauty in an acquiescence, a surrender. I surrender all, famous hymn. We surrender. We wave the white flag. We surrender completely to him, not partially. And then we enter in the treaty of surrender. And the treaty is the Brit, it's the covenant. And we surrender and we serve him as vassals under his mighty kingship. So by surrendering, we benefit greatly because we're allowed to be with him, to be in his presence. So I'm going to give you a chance to share a little bit too there, Ermin.
Oh, that's beautiful. Bob, I like the fact that even though you read the passage in Jeremiah, Pat read it also, because the old saying, right? Out of the mouth of 2 witnesses, 3 witnesses. So it was good. I really got a kick out of that.
Amen. It is good.
Yeah.
It is
beautiful.
Good.
Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.
Okay. Amen. So as we know, the stanza begins with 2 rhetorical questions, and which we already read many times. And of course, the rhetorical questions are used to set up an argument, right? To set up a position. He wants to persuade his reader, so he starts off with a rhetorical question. He is not seeking an answer. It's not seeking an answer per se. Okay, it's a setup. And the setup, as I said, the setup now begins his position, his argument. And the argument, of course, is the Lord's omnipresence. Okay, it's impossible to withdraw from him. It's impossible to hide from his presence. Okay, now regarding this concept, Paul uses, believe it or not, Paul uses the same thing in Romans chapter 8, and it's connected in a sense with that no separation thing. We cannot separate ourselves from the Lord. And Paul also uses two rhetorical questions in Romans chapter 8 to teach the same thing, that we cannot separate ourselves and that the Lord is not going to separate himself from us. So in Romans chapter 8, verses 35 and on, the two rhetorical questions are, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? That's the first question. Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? That's the second question. Right? So, of course, he's not really looking for an answer. He knows. He's setting up the argument. As it is written, for your sake we are killed all day long. We are accounted as sheep for the slaughter. Yet in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am persuaded, Paul says, that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, right? And remember that David talks about going up into the heavens and making his bed in Sheol, right? Paul says, no height, no depth, nor any other created thing shall separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Okay? So in both cases, we have two rhetorical questions that basically teach the same thing. We cannot separate ourselves from the Lord, and nor will he separate himself from his children. Now, to say that the Lord fills the earth is true, but in a sense, it's an understatement. It's an understatement because the Lord's presence is far beyond filling just the earth. The complete statement, the full statement, or I should say the real statement, the correct statement, even though he fills the earth and he's all over, but the full statement is what Solomon prayed when he dedicated the temple. And this is part of Solomon's prayer. He says, but will God indeed dwell on earth? Another rhetorical question. Behold, heaven and the heavens of heavens cannot contain you. How much more less this temple which I have built? So Solomon acknowledges that he's not just here. He doesn't just fill the earth. He encompasses the universe, the heavens of the heavens. That's his omnipresence. That's his true omnipresence. That's something. So here's a question, and Bob, you touched on this a little bit. You touched on this, right? So here's the question for you all: is his omnipresence an assuring thing, or is it an uncomfortable invasion of your privacy? All right, that's something that you have to really answer honestly to yourself. Look in the mirror and answer: is his presence an assuring thing, or is it an uncomfortable invasion of your privacy? And that depends on your lifestyle. And Bob, you touched on that, right? If you're trying to be clandestine and you're looking behind your back, making sure nobody sees you, the Lord sees, right? So the answer to the question is, it depends on your lifestyle. So please think on that. Think about that question.
Can I interject 1 second?
Bob, of course, of course.
One thing that is interesting is back in the 70s, the Police rock reggae band had a hit called "I'll Be Watching You." Every step you take, I'll be watching you. And people have been getting married to that song because it's this wonderful thing. But Sting, who wrote the song, says no. It's about surveillance. It's about stalking. It's about, I've got my eye on you. You can do nothing that I'm not aware of, that I'll be aware of. So it like he's saying, depending on your perspective, if we have a loving benefactor who's watching over us, making sure we don't fall or trip or be attacked, that's great. But he's also going to pry into our business, stuff that we're not so proud of. That's why we need to do that spring cleaning throughout the year. So now we have the autumn cleaning phase. So regardless, let's clean up. Let's clean up.
Right.
Because he's aware of everything. There's nothing you can get out, and the stuff that he would be not pleased with are stuff that's going to harm us in the long run. It's going to harm us. It's going to distract us. It's going to divide our loyalties. It's going to make us double-minded. And as Yaakov says in his first chapter, he says, "Don't let that man think he's going to get anything from Elohim, because he's double-minded, doble. He's doubtful. He's hedging his bets. He's like the turbulent waves on the ocean. He's going this way and that. You don't know if you can rely on him because he's very unreliable. So we need to be reliable, which is rock steady. As Messiah is our rock, we follow that rock. We look up to the rock that is higher than us. He pulls us out of the miry clay upon that rock. So we should not sell ourselves short and compromise, any of these things in our lives which can potentially hurt us and distract us and diminish us, make us less than. Nobody wants to be a less than. In fact,
right.
We talk in this world about disparaging each other, different peoples, different races, different ethnic groups. We treat people, different groups over the years would treat each other as a less than. That's why we can conquer you, wipe you out, take your land, which has been done throughout the world. Every tribe has been guilty of that. There's not one that stands above the others. They're mankind. That's what he's always done. Wipe out the ones that they think that they can beat and take over, and that's the standard operating procedure. But we need to be faithful. We need to be faithful and know that the one who loves us has got all these things to reveal to us in the days that we live in the days ahead. It's all good stuff. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go
Yes.
right ahead, sir.
No, not at all. Not at all. This is good. This is good. It's good. All right. So, all right. Let's do a little shifting of gears here, and let's get into a little bit of grammar. Let's see if I can get the PowerPoint going here.
Right.
Bob, please, Bob,
Your
let me know.
report.
Let me know when you do see it up on the screen there.
It's up on the screen there.
Okay, fantastic. So this is our verse, and what I want to function on, since we're talking about the inseparableness of the Lord's presence, right? Because that's the theme of the stanza. I want to talk about the inseparable preposition. I thought that was cute.
It's
All right.
adorable.
So yes, yeah, that's cute. Okay. So here is what we have. Here's one, the inseparable preposition, and we're going to talk about it. And here's the other one, but notice the pointing. So let's talk about the inseparable preposition in this inseparable stanza. All right. Okay. So the preposition is min, and this word can be translated from, away from, out of, or because of. So it's of course, like all words, depending on its context, and it's connected. It's inseparable. It's connected to the word as a prefix, and we see it. So there it is: the mem, the hirik, and the nun sofit. Min. Alrighty. Now, as you can see here, I want you to note two things, and I've highlighted it here. The first thing I want you to note is that the nun has elided or disappeared in both cases. Notice that min, the nun, has elided, all right? And the second thing that I want you to note is that in one case, you have what's called a sere, two dots pointing the mem. And in this case, in the second line, you have a hirik pointing the mem as the vowel, right? So let's talk a little bit about that and why is that so. And as you can see, it's inseparable, and it actually is called an inseparable preposition because it's connected, in this case, to the word ruach, right? Your ruach, your spirit. Alrighty. So when the nun elides, or when the nun assimilates, compensation is required, because if the n the nun goes, you have to compensate. So let's start with the second line first. Here we have the nun assimilating, but it's found in the doubling dagish inside the pay, believe it or not. So there is the compensation. And let me get back to the cursor here. The compensation for the assimilation of the nun is found in the doubling dagish inside the pay. Alrighty? And this will double the pay. However, in the second line, you have here a resh, which is of guttural. Okay. Now, because you cannot put a doubling dagish in the resh like you can in the pay, the hirik is then heightened to a sere, and that's where we get compensation there. So in both cases, you have the word min, from, but the nun elides, and then you have compensation. So me ruchecha and mi panecha. All right. So that's the deal with the inseparable preposition min. Any questions on that, Bob?
No, that's fascinating though, because you look at those two mems and say that they're both means, which means from,
Yes.
essentially, min haaretz, from the earth.
Correct.
Min haaretz, which is a word that we hear from time to time, but we don't see it there. So
Right.
seeing it presented
So
this way to understand it, yeah.
beautiful. Okay, let's move on. However, like with all languages, there's always an exception. And one exception is found in this word here, michutz, okay? Outside, often translated outside, literally means from outside. And we find an example of that in Genesis 19:16. And the reason why I say it's an exception is because the chet is a guttural. You cannot put a doubling dagish, and normally it's heightened to a sere. But in this case, there isn't a heightening to the sere. It stays a hirik, one dot. So there's an exception there. All right. Bob, it's funny because you mentioned min haaretz, right, from the earth. So I have a word here that's very similar to that. Now, sometimes the preposition min is attached with the makef, but when you have the makef, it unites it. So it is as if it's one word. So it's still inseparable. It's connected, even though you have the full min. So in this case, just one example from Genesis chapter 4, verse 11, from the earth, min ha adama. But nonetheless, the makef unites it, and hence it's still an inseparable preposition. Right? So that's the little grammar there on the preposition min, from, out of, because of, and so on. Now, I know you've heard me speak about this often, but I want to really drive home the point. This is beautiful poetry. Notice the balancing here of this first line. You have a balance of 3 words per line. Of course, the athnak divides the line, and then the siluk ends the line. You have a beautiful balanced line here, 3 words per line, and then the first line has 8 syllables, and the second line has 9 syllables, and it's a synonymous parallelism. There's a lot of juicy little beautiful things going on, subtle things going on here. Okay, and of course the word pairs are, where can I go, where can I flee from your spirit, from your presence. So it's saying the same thing twice, and they're rhetorical questions to set up the argument. All right, and that's all I have for now. So let me close this here, and Bob, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, that's fascinating with the min though. Min haaretz, min haadama, coming from Kimitzion.
Yes. So now you know, when you see the min, you see that mem and the nun has assimilated, elided. look for the dots and look for the following letter, whether it's a guttural or a non-guttural.
Excellent. Interesting. I wonder if there's an intentional progression where can I go to where can I flee? Where can I run away? Where can I, bolt out of here, as opposed to we just go from your ruach, as opposed to bolting from your presence. I wonder if there's a progression there also.
It's possible. I didn't think about that. It is possible, because fleeing usually, like you say, I'm out of here.
Right. But it's beautiful, and again, when we talk about the extremes, in next verse, ascend to the heavens or descend to Sheol, which is the zenith, and the nadir, which also is the north and the south, which is followed by the next verse, which talks about the east to the west. So all points on the compass are covered in these next two verses. So again, the whole world is in his hand. He got the whole world in his hand. He certainly does. And his presence is everywhere, in the minuscule and in the majestic and the mighty, like the mountains and the oceans. But he's also, on the fragile leaf where a butterfly is sitting. He's everywhere. That almost sounds like Taoism, right? To an extent, he's everywhere. He's in the dewdrop. He's in all these things. But all these things are happening with his awareness. He's aware of everything that happens everywhere, which is amazing. Not only is he aware of what we're talking about and what we're thinking, but he's aware of the raindrops. He's aware of how many rain. And this weekend, the next 2 days here in New York, there's a possible flood warning. So there is a time we got to pay attention and do what we need to do now, and not bemoan ourselves in our situation later on. But again, each drop of rain, each snowflake, which is distinct from each other, accumulate to create a snowfall to a blizzard. It's just amazing when you think of Elohim, when you think of the extent of what is Elohim, who is Elohim. It's magnificent, and it really stretches the mind, and it's not always comfortable to consider. That's why, where can I go from you, Ruach, and where can I just run out of here from your presence? Because I can't take it. It's just too much for me. I got to go. Sorry, we'll talk again sometime. It's where can I flee? Where can I run? Because when you truly get a glimpse of the fullness of Yah, it's overwhelming. And David expresses that during the third stanza, where it says, if I were to count them, I'd fall asleep and I'd wake up and I'm still here at the beginning. I thought I had made some progress, but I'm still here. I've made no progress that's discernible, and yet I've gained more than I could possibly withstand in this mortal shell. But it just makes us appreciate him that much more. How wonderful he is. It says that Messiah, by him all things subsist. By him the molecules hold together. By him the atoms working together. By him all the cells are working together and each one is functioning. So trillions of cells in our bodies are all functioning magnificently. In the past, we used to say, well, the cell's interesting, but these things are just like a little block, a little blob. And when you look at what a cell is, a person cell or the cell from a tree, they're so different, and yet they both function as life-giving, life staples. It's just amazing. I can't even really express myself in that because it's just overwhelming. But that's what we're tackling this psalm for ourselves and for you out there too, because we should be in awe of him. And each of these verses, take a deep breath and appreciate who Yah is, and appreciate how deep he is and how deep we need to go to even scratch the surface. So we need to serve this magnificent Elohim. We need to return his love. He's the one who defines love. and initiates love. And it's up to us to grab hold of that love, return it to him. And with that love, we love others. If we don't love Yah first, we don't know what love is that we give to each other. It's a carnal, it's a nice feeling, but it's not true ahave. It's not a true love. It's not agape in its pristine form, which only comes from him. And we can only get that through him by watching and feeding on him and feeding on the word. And we can get that beginning, get it moving, and creating the new man, the new woman in us, who we are. And we need to behave like a new creation and not just float through the days, but truly invest in them. And as Yah says in the Psalms, teach us to number our days. But the word for number is actually prepare. Help us to prepare for each day. Help us to prepare. Let us get ourselves ready for this. When I was working, my wife Regina would lay out my shirt and my underwear and my bed. She'd get me all set. So I'd prepare. She's prepared for that beginning part of my day. I had little breakers. That's part of the preparation. Making sure I get up and get out a little early so I can catch the bus and not the next bus. So it's all part of the preparation of each day. Help us to prepare. Help us to be aware of our involvement in the day and not take it as a passive thing. We are actively involved in each moment of the day. So whether we're paying attention or falling asleep, whether you hear me or whether I'm just sound like noise, that's up to you. But be involved, be engaged with each day. Like the old saying is carpe diem, seize the day, grab hold of it. Don't let it slip away. Don't let it slip away. Because as I've said before, it's a microcosm of our life, right? We're born in the morning. We can't see initially, but we got to get our eyes. We wash ourselves. We get a sense of who we are. We go through the day. We go to school. We go to work. Whatever we do, and then at the end of the day, we're starting to get tired, starting to get old, and we're starting to need to rest. And so we go home. We retire, and we spend the remaining time getting comfortable for what awaits us beyond. And then once we get tired, we go lay down, and that's it. But we wake up to a new reality the next day. So it's like a repetition of life, like the Groundhog Day, right? But treat each day. Don't let it go by. The days go by quick enough as it is. So we need to grab hold and make an impact upon it, because Yah does not just want us to float. He wants us to, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Make an impact on each day. And anyway, I'll stop there, because otherwise I'll just keep going. So Herman, tell me something.
Yes, sir. What would you like to know?
You tell me.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's what I have for verse 7. I just want to invite the folks to come back for verse 8, and we'll give them some more juicy information.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's tov. It's good. It is good to praise the creator of the universe, to get to know him better. And what better way of getting to know him is by looking at his word, coming to know how he's expressing himself in bite-sized format, so that we can scap it up. We can learn it little by little, learning about things like afnacs and things like that. I mean, what the heck is an afnac? Well, it's a little arrow, and it marks a section of a psalm or of a period or a paragraph. As we saw in the last verse 12, there's 3 sections as opposed to 2. So we're just learning to appreciate the architecture. We can see the buildings and just see a row of buildings, or we could take the time and look at the architecture and look at the detail. And there's been some great architects in our history, but a lot of the stuff that's being built now is ugly and is unsightly. There's no inspiration. There's no imagination. It's very sad. It's a symbol. It's a symptom of what's going on in the world today. We're being satisfied. I told my kids, never settle. Never settle. You got one kid who's causing trouble in the classroom, but he kind of listens to you. Okay, let me hang out with him. No, you don't settle for people. Don't settle for anything. When I think of settling, I think of the creatures of the ocean that we're not supposed to consume and ingest, who just sit at the bottom and settle. And whatever dead things float down their way, gobble, gobble, delicious. And you are what you eat. We don't want to be dead crustaceans and mollusks and things like that, right? So we don't want to settle for anything. I tell people that all the time. Never settle. We don't settle for religion. If we're truly loving Yah, if we truly love the Lord, then it should reflect in your life. You should be living a life that it's evident who you serve. And we get excited about these things. So if you're kind of watching along and saying these two doofuses talking about the Bible like it's Ben and Jerry's latest flavor ice cream, we've outgrown that. We've outgrown that. We're into that next phase, that next step. And we're always seeking that change. We're seeking to prove all things, test all things. And the word that's inspired, that he exhales, that we breathe in, it's there to correct us. And if you haven't been corrected lately, I think you're overdue. You're overdue for a visit for just like you get your car, inspected every year. And they basically, if you know the guy, all he does is look both ways and just slap a sticker on your car and doesn't even inspect. You see whether or not, your brake pads are working or not, whether or not he's sending you off to die in a fiery crash, thinking he's doing you a favor, or whether we evaluate these things. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to evaluate life in this day and age, and through the eyes of David, the great king, in his humility and how he approached Yah and appreciated him, to the farthest reaches of appreciation and in awe. And he was the king, and yet he knew that he was subservient to this greater king. And so again, I thank Herman for being with us. I thank all of you who have been watching and staying with us this time. And I'm just very, very grateful that we've been maintaining. We pray that you would tell others about what we're doing. If you think it's worthwhile, I think it is. We're putting a lot into this, and it's not the result of, wow, I worked really hard. Please do me a favor and watch what we're doing. We're doing this for whoever, just like Yah so loved the world. He so loved the whosoever who would believe and enter into life. So that's what we're trying to reach out to, the whosoever. So if you're finding anything good here, let other people know, and let them join in. And again, we have the live chat going. If you have any comments or questions, we've had that in the past. We have people interacting with us, and that's great. But if you're watching this anytime other than Wednesday at 7:30 to 8:30 roughly, maybe not. But you can contact me through MIDweek. I'll be here Sabbath morning at 11 a.m. And if you have any chat-worthy comments, you can do that then. Or anyway, so I know that we're functioning by different calendars time, but for us, tomorrow evening, Thursday evening, is when we begin the evening of the 9th day, entering into Friday, which is Yom HaKippurim, the Day of Atonements, plural. And we deny ourselves and we get right with Yah and appreciate his what he's done for us as Kohen Agadol, the high priest. And then the next day is Shabbat, so it's a busy weekend, and it's all where he's focused. We need to focus more on him and appreciate him. And anyway, let me stop. I'm going to start to ramble a little bit if I haven't already. But I thank you again for watching. And again, we'll be here next Wednesday evening at 7:30. Be there or be square, or we're sort of rectangular here. We're double rectangulars, so we're neither square nor circular, or triangular, or trapezoidal for that matter. But we are rectangular, and we will hopefully be here for you. So watch us now, watch us later, whenever you can, and let people know. Let people know. Don't let this be a secret. Let this be broadcast worldwide. So we thank you again. And any final words, Herman?
No, just come back. There's I guess so. There's a very interesting little feature in verse 8 that maybe I should just tease the audience. What do you think, Bob?
Well, go ahead, tease them.
Tease? Okay, let me there's a very interesting feature I want to bring out, hoping that you can think about it. Um, do you see verse 8 up on there on the screen, Bob?
Yep.
All right, this is the verse that we're going to be tackling next week. And the feature that I want to bring out is the kaf sofit. Look at the kaf sofit. It has its regular comments, but look, there's a dot in there. What is that? What is that? So we'll talk a little bit about that as a teaser. So come on back next week, folks, and we'll talk about this kaf sofit with that dogish in there, that little dot.
Yes. And keep your mind and your eyes on the dots. And that's all for this evening and for this night. Be well, be healthy, be strong. Know that greater is he that is in you than he's in the world. And you are a person of great character and quality. Keep moving forward. Keep making progress. And don't let anyone tell you different. Don't let anyone beat you down, because Yahuwah loves you and he wants us to do our best every day and to be safe against illness, against any threats that are out there. Be paying attention, though. Pay attention to what's going on. Gilbert, are you there? No, Gilbert didn't make it tonight.
Well, Bob, William gave you a smiley face there.
Yeah, William is an amazing guy, absolutely amazing guy. And one of these days you'll get to meet him on a Monday evening, hopefully, and
Hopefully.
See for yourself. Regina, could you close us in prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this time of gathering together and learning the word as we share it throughout the world, Lord. But I just thank you that you open up our hearts and our minds to understanding your word better. And I thank you for all that you've done for us. And we give you all honor and glory and praise in Messiah's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So be strong. Chazak. Be of good courage. And attack the day. Tomorrow's a brand new one. So let's make the most of it. So we say, Shalom, Shalom. We say, Laila Tov, Ulehitraot. We say good night. And we're going to check you guys out, you guys and gals out another time. So be well. Shalom, Shalom.
Shalom.